You're listening to the What Is It Show. Life, reality, and redemption. Here's your host, Shane Haleko.
This podcast is meant for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is advised.
The story you are about to listen to is a true story, based on events over the last few years. This podcast is being narrated by Frank Perez. Episode 3. Incidents Report, Groden Center, November 3, 2016.
The following incident reports that took place on November 3, 2016 actually support the Groden Center's nurse email dated October 14, 2016, where she expressed her concerns about the ability for staff to keep Sean, his peers, and staff safe from Sean's explosive behaviors. 6:30 a.m. Sean is having a tantrum in his bedroom. The severity of this is a 5, which is considered severe, and the duration of the behaviors lasted 3.5 hours. Sean was yelling, hitting his wall, his bed, and his dresser. He was also threatening staff and himself. I'm assuming himself would mean self-harm. 3.5 hours though. The report reads,
Sean started kicking and hitting his wall and bed. The staff entered his room and asked him to relax and go back to bed. Sean started yelling, threatening, and hitting his wall. He began to kick the dresser and rolled to the floor. Once on the floor, these behaviors continued. 8 a.m. Sean's escalation and unsafe behaviors continue.
So, what did staff think was going to happen? Did they think Sean would just self-soothe, relax, and go to bed? You allow Sean to continue to escalate himself. Once Sean began threatening and destroying property, hands should have been placed on him to reduce the chances of him to continue to escalate. We told the Groden Center that Sean is as strong as an ox and that his unsafe behaviors could continue to last for very long amounts of time if not handled correctly. If Sean feels unsafe, then you will see behaviors that are so extreme they can and will become uncontrollable for staff to handle. The report indicates that for 2 hours, the severity level of his behaviors continued. Blank stare, swearing, non-compliance, grunting. The report gets a bit confusing due to one of the pages being missing from it. Sean was able to get inside the minibus all alone. This is the bus that transports him and his peers to school. I can't even imagine trying to explain how this boy was able to get into the bus. Why wasn't it locked? Anyway, let's continue with the report.
He was able to lock staff out of the bus. Staff redirected Sean and attempted to encourage him to come back in the house. Sean went from the back of the bus to the driver's seat. At some point, Sean was able to smash out one of the windows. While in the driver's seat, he began pressing the horn, push all the buttons, and pull on all the cords and wires. He was also pulling on the emergency brake and pulling on the shifter. Sean then started throwing out items through the glass window that he broke. He then continuously started to open and slam the passenger door repeatedly. He then got into the van's contents, destroying everything. He got into the biohazard spill cleanup kit, opened up every package, and getting these poisonous chemicals, which included bleach, all over his hands, and eating them. Sean was then putting his hands in his mouth. He then proceeded to put the red biohazard bag over his head. At this point, staff immediately called 911. The staff was finally able to get into the bus and monitor Sean until police and EMS arrived. Sean was sent to Hasbro Children's Hospital by rescue. Hasbro was notified that he had ingested poisonous chemicals.
Absolutely lost for words on the failure of the staff, the Groden Center, DCF, and the school district on their outright failure to keep our son safe. Out of control incidents like this should never be allowed to happen. This one situation alone could have led to the death of our child by ingestion of poison. The Groden Center nurse was right all along. The staff were not properly trained to keep my son safe, and this really pisses me off. After being discharged from the Groden Center and no longer being drugged up on medications that would put him into a zombie mode all day, our son Shawn, without being prompted, told us about an incident that took place, an incident that both my wife and I were unaware of. This took place around November 2016. Our son's age was 15 at the time. My wife and I were pressed for time to find a new residential placement. We explained to the Groden Center our son's extreme behaviors, that he was very verbal and high-functioning with autism. We also explained that he is extremely strong and big and can and will become aggressive and assaultive, creating a danger to himself and others. They told us that they could handle him and keep him safe. It seemed like there were seasoned staff working at this facility. It also appeared that most of the other residents were much low functioning and nonverbal. The awake overnight staff seemed to be customized to giving the residents their medication, which would knock them out until dawn. The seasoned awake overnight staff felt content to sleep once the residents were sleeping. Our son woke up during the overnight and found the awake overnight staff sleeping. He made his way to the kitchen and began eating the pizza and French fries in the fridge. He then made his way to the sleeping overnight staff and began going through his wallet. The overnight staff worker was startled and restrained our son to the floor with his knee to our son's face. We saw the marking on his face. Our son was released from this abusive restraint and retreated to his bedroom. The overnight staff followed him and went into his bedroom. Our son became aggressive towards this staff member, and this staff member attempted to restrain our son on his bed. Our son begins to overpower this staff member, and the staff member uses a pillowcase to put over our son's mouth for him not to breathe. Once this staff member saw that our son was tiring, he released the pillowcase from our son's mouth and retreated out of our son's bedroom. I felt sadness and guilt for not being there to protect my son from harm. We, of course, reported it to the Groden Center. The center did their own internal investigation and found no wrongdoing with their staff. And to this day, our son's story has not changed. When you read this incident of abuse/neglect, it really does not surprise me. In my opinion, staff were afraid of dealing with Shawn due to his unbelievable strength and their lack of training. Shawn, due to his size and being able to verbalize, this young hero of mine was able to defend himself. Here is a summary of Shawn's stay at the Groden Center group home. The total number of days? 40. The actual days at the group home? 14. Of those 14 days, there were 18 incident reports. The number of days he spent hospitalized was 26. And that is what it is.
The details and accuracy of these events are to the best of our knowledge. Any discrepancy in terms of time and/or dates are not intended to mislead the listener. These stories are true and officially documented.
Stay tuned to episode 4 of these podcast series.